How is it going, everybody? Welcome back to part two of the dinosaurs. Now, today in chapter two, we are focusing on the Jurassic period. Basically, the last episode ended with the end Triassic extinction, and now we're going into the early Jurassic period. So, first of all, we get introduced to some really cool dinosaurs, like the beautiful basosauropodomorph Massospondylus. I really liked the way that this guy looked. I especially loved its colors. Green just makes sense on Massospondylus. I don't know what it is. When I drew Massospondylus for the Guess That Paleo Art video on our podcast channel, I gave it green colors because in my mind, for some reason, green just makes sense for Massospondylus. So I really like the way that it looks right here. It also encounters an early sauropod, like an actual true sauropod, not just a sauropodomorph, that being Volcanodon. And this is another thing that this documentary does a lot. It like introduces an animal that is a little bit more established, like basosauropodomorphs, for example. We got that established with Plateosaurus in the Triassic episode, and now it continues with Massospondylus. And then you introduce an animal that's going to essentially usurp that animal. In this case, that is Volcanodon. So the Massospondylus is kind of like struggling with the changing environments in the early Jurassic period. So much so that it seems likely it's going to get replaced by, actual sauropod dinosaurs, and that is represented by Volcanodon. Again, it's kind of done in a way where it feels like, Volcanodon just recently popped up like last week or something like that. And then it just kind of like it took over the environments that Massospondylus was already adapted for. Now, again, these changes happened a lot more gradually, and it wasn't nearly as dramatic as it's portrayed in the documentary. But in large part, of course, it does seem like they're doing fairly like they're being in the broad strokes of it, it is being fairly accurate in that department. We also do see Heterodontosaurus. I really liked this little guy. I love the feathers that it has. It's such a beautiful design, really. It's kind of portrayed like a little squirrel running around and picking up pine cones and just kind of like munching on them like it's a little squirrel and also filling up its cheeks. I don't know how likely that is. It is thought that quite a few like ornithischian dinosaurs had cheeks, um, which that's maybe it's possible. I don't know. That is an adaptation that would allow an animal to eat food without losing that food out the side. We see a lot of dinosaurs in this documentary with cheeks, like dinosaurs that are somewhat related to Heterodontosaurus. Again, another huge critique that I have is just the separation between reptiles and dinosaurs. Again, dinosaurs are reptiles. That is never really clarified in this documentary. Again, it's just constantly stated that dinosaurs were having to compete with other reptiles. They don't use the word other. Instead, they just say they have to compete with reptiles, period. So that is like that's my biggest critique I have with it so far. We do see Dilophosaurus in this segment, in the early Jurassic segment, with a pretty nice design. Now, its body posture seems a little bit strange to me. Like, I think it might be a little bit too bulbous in the midsection, but it's really not a bad design. I do quite like it. I love the way that the crests look. The skull shape is quite nice as well. We see a female Dilophosaurus that encounters a male, and let me just tell you, the buildup to meeting the male Dilophosaurus was awesome. It was kind of like set up like a horror movie where you're like a tension is building. You hear the howls of this male Dilophosaurus in the distance, and then all of a sudden the camera pans to the right, and then sting. There's like a quick noise that you hear, and there's just a male Dilophosaurus menacingly just standing there staring. It was quite well done. I liked it. Now, the male Dilophosaurus also looks really cool. It has brighter colors than the female, which is something that I'm sure they want you to link to modern day birds. It proceeds to do a lecking sort of behavior, which is what, a lot of modern day ground birds do that. They'll kind of like scratch the ground and kind of dance around. We actually see it scratch the ground, and that's actually pointed out in the narration. We do know that some larger theropod dinosaurs would do this because we have found lecking marks in several different fossil sites, or well, I don't know if it's several per se, but in a few different fossil sites. I've actually seen some lecking fossils, like I've seen them like the actual scratches in the ground, and it's very cool stuff. So it was really nice to have that pointed out. It like shows off its really red throat and its red crests. It was a very nice scene. It's always really cool to see Sort of like, I mean, this isn't just predominantly a bird behavior. Obviously, I think other types of reptiles do the very same thing, but it's just always cool to see something like that on theropods. I always do really like documentaries that do sometimes emphasize other behaviors in dinosaurs. Like you don't just see the fights and the hunting and all of that. And there's plenty of other things that we see these dinosaurs do, which I very much do appreciate. But I will state that the female didn't think he was gifted enough. And I just want to say, I think he is very gifted. I think he's very, very gifted. He's a very gifted Dilophosaurus. We have a brief shot of some pliosaurs. They don't get much of a spotlight here, but we do see them. Mamenchisaurs also make an appearance. I quite liked their design. They had some really nice colors, a lot of splotches of red on them, and their very long necks were emphasized here as well. The sauropod designs were really quite nice across the board. We saw a few of them throughout this documentary, and I don't think there was a single one that I disliked. Anchiornis makes a reappearance. Obviously, we saw this guy in Life on Our Planet. The design has not changed. The same can be said for the Sign Raptor. Sign Raptor makes an appearance as well, again with the same design. And this time, instead of the Anchiornis jumping off of a cliff to glide, it climbs up a tree, and that's how it escapes the Sign Raptor. It was a nice little segment. Then, of course, it is taken down by a pterosaur. Again, something that emphasizes the competition the dinosaurs had with other reptiles. In this case, the competition of the air, I suppose. Dinosaurs were sort of on their way to becoming a little bit more adept at flying, and that was represented through Anchiornis, who was able to glide. And then it is kind of like it's shot down essentially by the pterosaur, who they have ruled the skies already. So yeah, you have a lot of moments like that in this documentary that just shows the evolutionary arms race, I suppose. We then get later and later into the Jurassic period. We do have some establishing shots of Jurassic North America with some sauropods. Now, it looks like Brachiosaurus and some type of diplodocid, either Brontosaurus or Apatosaurus. My money's probably on Apatosaurus, but I'm not too sure. They don't take the spotlight, unfortunately, but they looked pretty good. I quite liked the way that they looked. And then we get to see a herd of stegosaurs. Now, the stegosaurus design is pretty good. The head shape does seem a little bit strange to me, and it might be the shape of the beak. Now, obviously, that beak would have been layered in keratin, so I don't know if we have the exact shape of it in life. That's mainly just like a personal nitpick, not necessarily a nitpick, but just a personal observation, I suppose. The neck is long. Stegosaurus did have a long neck. The dorsal plates are present, those being the osteoderms that form the huge kind of like diamonds on its back, and it does have a thagomizer. I will say that I don't think the tail was raised up enough. Like it wasn't like Stegosaurus had a pretty high raised tail that sort of dipped down towards the end. The reason why it dipped down is because of that collection of spikes known as a thagomizer. Uh, those would have been heavy at the end of the tail, so it would have dipped down a little bit. We didn't really see that in this design, which was kind of unfortunate for me, but it was a minor thing in the grand scheme of things. I did like this Stegosaurus design. What I do not like is the Allosaurus design. The Allosaurus design, it is the same design from Life on Our Planet, which I already did not like. Again, it has like a long neck and just like huge feet. Why does it have such big clown feet? I don't understand it. And obviously, it's covered in osteoderms. Now, Allosaurus most likely did not have osteoderms. We've found quite a few Allosaurus specimens, and not a single osteoderm has been found. So yeah, the osteoderms were probably not present on Allosaurus. In a lot of ways, it looks like the Jurassic World Allosaurus because of that. Obviously, the Jurassic World Allosaurus has like the same coloration vaguely, and it does have osteoderms on its back. Now, we're following like a younger male who's trying to find something to eat. And he comes across like a larger female who seems to be eating on some type of diplodocid. My guess is Diplodocus because it looked fairly similar to the Diplodocus that we saw in Life on Our Planet. Now, one element about the Allosaurus design that I liked was with the female, she had like part of her lips missing because, she had some battle damage. I liked that because there's oftentimes animals in nature today that are just living with injuries like that. It gives her some story, first of all, and it makes it feel a little bit more realistic because not all dinosaurs would have just been perfect looking when they're walking around. They would be covered in injuries, especially for a dinosaur like Allosaurus, who, as seen through the Big Al specimen, and I believe the Big Al 2 specimen shows that there's a lot of injuries present, which implies that Allosaurus had a pretty rough life. And so showing some of those injuries on a model was a good idea. Now, she attacks the male, to get him away from her because she's currently eating. She doesn't want to share. He's lucky to survive. I'm glad that it wasn't like a fight to the death. It was like just a quick little, "Hey, what are you doing? Get away from me," type of thing. And we saw that in the Ballad of Big Al, which was it's a nice little behavior detail. Later on, the young male Allosaurus encounters the Stegosaurus herd, and he's so hungry apparently that he's going to attempt it. But they form a little defensive wall sort of thing, which is not something I've ever seen done with stegosaurs. I've seen that done with ceratopsians before, like in books and things like that, but never with stegosaurs. So that was an interesting behavior. Obviously, behavior is always speculative. I don't think we necessarily have any evidence of them doing this, but it's always really fun to see what interpretation they apply to it. But then they are attacked by the larger female Allosaurus, and she singles one of them out, and it's a pretty brutal fight overall. For some reason she's like prioritizing going after the osteoderm. She bites on it like twice and rips it off, and that obviously didn't really do much. And so the Stegosaurus has a broken osteoderm. He uses his Thagomizer and like continuously trips her up. And then she gets to a point where she's attacking him, and the Thagomizer stabs right through like the hip, which injures her, and she falls down, and then she's killed by the male. And it's emphasized that Allosaurus was a cannibal. So yeah, most theropods were probably cannibalistic. That doesn't mean that they prioritize cannibalism. Instead, it's like it's implied that this male Allosaurus is simply just hungry, and there's an easy source of food right there, that being the female Allosaurus, which is something that would probably happen at some point. Again, if you're a hungry, large theropod, like a multi-ton theropod that needs to eat, and you have an opportunity to eat, well, you're probably not going to say no to it. So, yeah, no, that was, it was just a breath of fresh air to not see it done to Majungasaurus for once, because oftentimes to show cannibalism in dinosaurs, it's always Majungasaurus. So it was really cool to see it in this instance. I also do really like a side note, I like the fact that the Stegosaurus won, showing that herbivorous dinosaurs were not pushovers, as they are often sometimes portrayed, I suppose. Yeah, it was an interesting fight. I didn't mind it. So that was the end of episode 2. Essentially, that was our Jurassic episode. At the end, it was hinted that we're going into the early Cretaceous period, and so the next episode will be Cretaceous focused, which will be fun. So keep an eye out for that video that we'll be uploading tomorrow. Anyway, that is pretty much all I have for this one. Thank you guys so much for watching, and have an awesome day.